So I'm excited to keep building off the work that we've been doing this morning and to extend from young children, small numbers to bigger numbers, and also thinking about our role as math leaders. I wanted to revisit this slide that I opened with and just have you take a look at it and go, okay, like, does something sit with you a little bit more deeply? Are you resonating with something a little bit more? Just take a moment to read through these CGI big ideas. And remember, these are on your lovely laminated memory mat. If you were going to sit and write these down, they're all there for you. So my hope is that we're continuing to deepen our learning around these principled ideas. People often ask, what is CGI? Am I doing CGI? Am I not doing CGI? Can you help me learn about CGI? And it's kind of a lot to talk about, but in some ways, really grounding ourselves in these principled ideas hopefully makes it feel accessible, and also, for me, really connected to the early math essentials that your state has been working on over the past many years. So my hope is that there's lots of connections to the work that you're doing. So as we're continuing on this next day and a half, right, we're continuing to think about our own learning, but also learning and what this means for teachers that we're supporting and what this might mean for leaders. And again, people in this room, right, we're in very different roles. But as we put on these kind of different hats and these different lenses, it pushes us to think about maybe, maybe this was really illuminative, like maybe it kind of was an aha moment for me, but what does this mean for me in supporting other teachers? So just a quick kind of opening into that. We're going to get much more into it tomorrow. For many of you who are going to be continuing on with early math specialist work or leader work, or there's going to be other opportunities that are shared with you, we're going to be sharing routines of teacher learning that we are engaging with together, and all of this will be made available to you, right? In Google Drives, there's QR codes there in case some people really want the whole thing right now. But there are things that you can do with teachers. So watching a children's thinking video together, we've done a lot of that, right? You know how to do that. And you know what it felt like for you, right? What learning you kind of experienced. Maybe you were surprised. Maybe you were like, that was brilliant. Maybe you were a little puzzled, right? Maybe you had to think mathematically what's happening. Maybe it made you go, oh, well, what does that mean for my teaching? So we want other teachers to have experiences like this, right? And all of the videos that I'm using in these couple of days, they're either available to you in your books or on publicly available websites. So we'll give you access to all of that. Don't worry about it now. But it's kind of a space to listen to children's thinking, and a space to learn more about kids' thinking is one of the kind of core ideas about how to support others to take on these ideas. So that's kind of one teacher learning routine that we'll share with you. And maybe you need the paper, and maybe you're like, I know exactly what we would do, right? We would just sit and watch a video together and talk about it. Another might be around analyzing student work. So in PLCs, grade level meetings, staff meetings, a common practice that can be really productive is to bring a set of student work, right? Just like what you saw here with Megan's gum. And there's different ways that we might engage with each other around this student work in terms of sorting it, choosing some pieces that might be interesting, thinking about next steps. All right, so that's another kind of routine that we might have, again, that grounds our conversations and our collective learning and our school communities in children's thinking. A lot of you are thinking a lot about Number Corner, right, and how we're supporting teachers in taking on that work. This is just a photo of Jess doing like a nice little Number Corner routine with some students. So a lot of people wonder how the CGI work and Number Corner goes together. I think learning about the detail of children's thinking will help you interpret the things that children might share with you in Number Corner. Maybe you all are making other connections. But from this video, we're not going to watch the video, but Jess is posing this problem, 13 minus 8 equals 5, and I want you to just take a look at, she charts two strategies, right, on that number line. Can you just take a moment, take a look at the two strategies, and think about, are there any connections that you're already seeing to the CGI work that we're thinking about together? And maybe you can tell someone next to you. What does it feel like you? Yeah, well, let's talk about some of the strategies. So we've got EJ's work in green. Where do you think EJ started? What number? Ooh, I heard two different things. What do you think? Okay, that's okay. EJ started at 8 probably. And then what did EJ do from the 8? By ones, right? So counting strategy? Is that what that feels like? Tiny bit different because he's counting up, or she, from counting up from the 8 and not back from the 13, but it's still this kind of counting type of strategy. And then Carly, whose name was spelled incorrectly, but that's okay, they revised it. Where do you think Carly might have started? At the 13. And then what do you think Carly's first step was from 13? Yeah, so 13 take away 3 is 10, and then take away another 5, because we're trying to take away 8 altogether, right? But if I take away 3, so 13 take away 3 is 10, and then I know I need to take away another 5. Does that remind you a little bit of a number fact or a derived fact strategy a little bit? Because I know that 13 minus, right, I know something about that 10, and that's going to get me there. I need to kind of keep going and deriving from there in order to get to the answer. But what's lovely is they're actually like layered onto this number line together. We can see what's similar, we can see what's different across them. So, right, with my knowledge of children's strategies and how children's strategies develop, it might help me interpret the kinds of strategies that children are sharing in Number Corner and building from each other's work. Many of you might have coaching, or, I mean, some of you are administrators in the room, but your role might be just another body in a classroom as teachers are working with kids. And I think of being a coach with this lens is just another person to help listen to children together, right? So now we have a couple of adults in the room, we can talk to kids, we can listen to kids together. And if our focus is on student thinking and children's thinking, that's really grounding all of our conversations and all of our learning together. I think you were talking about some of that yesterday, for those of you who were here yesterday. So just, I don't know, that was just a couple of quick examples, but I'm curious, thinking about, I think many of you are thinking, we've done a lot of learning this morning, but what does this mean for me to support other teachers? I'm curious if you can just kind of brainstorm with people at your table. Again, folks are gonna have very different roles and different contexts, but what opportunities might you have to support teacher learning in any of the kinds of ways that we just talked about now, or that you think might be helpful related to the work that we've been doing this morning? So talk to each other. Is there an idea that you think would be helpful to share from your group? I was going to put the impetus on Rusty to see how well it was. Okay. All right. Can I invite us back together? Yeah, Jess and Sonia, if we could have mics ready. So we'd love to just hear some of the things you were brainstorming together about what you see as an opportunity, being mindful that, again, people's contexts are so varied across this room. So what do you see as an opportunity for yourself? And that might jog, other people's thinking about, oh, I didn't even think about that as an opportunity for me. Anyone willing to get us started? Just where do you see a potential opportunity to support teacher learning in your own context?
So I am part of cohort 1 supporting a teacher, and our focus is how to record student ideas. And so I think sharing that back with teachers that are new to Number Corner would really help them as to see this is how they recorded this idea when they did Number Corner.
All right, lovely. Thank you. Trish, go ahead.
And at our table, we were thinking about the use of video. We don't have opportunity to get into each other's classrooms because it costs money to have subs and all of the things. But we might be able to find some time to watch a short clip of someone else's practice and then do some reflecting.
Lovely. Yeah, do you want to pass the microphone? Keep going. By the way, this is point to someone next to you that you're like, they had a good idea. Yeah, so that's what they just did over here.
Okay, I am a classroom teacher, and we were talking about, creating all of these anchor charts can get overwhelming. Where are you storing them? How are you referring back to them? And years ago, I went to, I don't know if it was number talks, math talks, something along those lines. And to show student thinking, we kept a notebook that we put on our document camera. And then that way you could write little notes, you could tab things, you could go back, you could, bring your notebook and work with a colleague to see student thinking. So that was really helpful instead of, 300 anchor charts.
Yeah.
Trying to go through those.
On a breezy day like this, walking
Yes,
across your
exactly.
campus with that. But it sounds like even just something as simple as a notebook to capture the variety of
Because
student
you're really
thinking.
doing it anyway. I mean, you're doing the writing, so it just kind of made sense.
Got it. Thank you. Other ideas that you brainstormed together? Yeah, go ahead. Right behind you, son.
We were talking because we're instructional coaches, and so we asked the classroom teachers, like, what would be supportive? How could we support you in something like this? And they had suggested coming in and modeling a lesson, and then maybe co-planning a number talk, and then having them do a number talk and get us giving feedback on the process after. So kind of doing like a mini coaching cycle on this.
Right. So you being an extra body in the classroom, even the before process, like all that planning work, like what we talked about in terms of maybe this story's great, maybe we want to adapt it, right? That's, if you can find space and time for that in your settings, in your professional learning, that's really rich opportunities. Or maybe it's actually on the ground with kids. And I think oftentimes people ask me to come model a lesson. That word model is so tricky for me as an outside teacher or coach, because I don't know the kids. And so when you do, because you're at that school and you've been there, it's a tiny bit different, but as a complete outsider, it's a tiny bit hard for me to step into their norms, their ways of participating, not knowing kids. And so I try to gently encourage the teacher to co-lead with me and think about that as a quote unquote demo or modeling opportunity because they know the kids, right? And they know so they can more deeply and more richly engage in that. But I get that that's often a common request that we get.
What about a lounge problem? Like, put up a math problem in the lounge and have your staff come up with all the different ways that they're going to solve it. right? And they can in fact see, the divergent thinking.
How's that sound?
Low stress, right?
I've seen, yep, low risk. I've seen a CGI monthly newsletter in the back of bathroom stalls. Kid you not, but sounds similar, right? Maybe you're not like writing on it. You're just like it's posing you an idea or sorry. But it's right, these artifacts that it sounds like an artifact that you might have in a lounge, in a common space, in a shared space that just gets you to share thinking. So maybe that's where your anchor charts can go, right? Because it's going to spark conversation. That too. Yeah. Copy room, hallways. Yep. So that was just an opening to a conversation. Again, we're going to get more deeply into some of the work of supporting other teachers. But those are the hats that I want you to wear, right? What am I learning myself? And how am I thinking about potential opportunities I might have to support others? Because it's not going to be the exact same for each of you in this room as you're moving forward. And the same way, CGI is not going to look the same way in every single classroom. Supporting other teachers in CGI is not going to look the exact same across schools and districts and ISDs and such. So my hope is that you continue to find space and make connections and keep talking to each other and brainstorming through. We continue to have these parking lots where you can, pose these questions, hopes, and needs, and so that's a goal for the remaining time we have together. All right, let's get back into kids thinking. We're going to watch a video now of Evan, and let's see, what should I share with you? Okay, the numbers are going to be a little bit bigger, so maybe I'll start there. So because I know not all of us, I asked who was more comfortable with upper grades work. So that showed me that a lot of us don't really think, I don't know, maybe you do, but don't have a lot of, you're not every day with kindergartners and such, right? But I really pushed us to think about the details of what happens even with really small numbers. And what we're doing is we're building into larger and larger numbers and more complicated math content from there, from this intuitive foundation that children come to school with. So here in this problem, Mr. Cisco wants to figure out how many tortillas he has, and there are 10 tortillas in a package. Mr. Cisco has 14 packages of tortillas and 5 extra tortillas. Don't ask me where the 5 are. Maybe they're on a plate or I don't know, in an open package or something, but how many tortillas does he have? So seeing this kind of story problem and thinking about what we've been doing so far, can you just anticipate, with somebody next to you, what do you think you might see in this video? What do you think might happen? Talk to someone next to you. Yes. All right. All right, here we go. So we're going to watch Evan solve this problem. I'm going to spoil it for you a little bit. He's not going to get it right away, which you're probably really excited about. Because the videos that we've seen so far, you're like, not every kid's going to solve it perfectly right away. So he's going to have to think through it a little bit. And so I want us to really think about how that supports us in our growing practice around CGI.
Mr. Cisco wants to figure out how many tortillas he has. There are 10 tortillas in a package. Mr. Cisco has 14 packages of tortillas and 5 extra tortillas. How many tortillas does he have?
Oh. Okay, I get it now.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you're thinking?
I haven't done this kind of problem at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because I haven't figured out how to
Well, a minute ago you said, "Oh, I get it." So what do you get about the problem?
that there's 10 tortillas and there's 14 in each, and there's 5 extra. I'll just focus on that like later. And I haven't learned how to do this type of problem. What I would do if this was like under 10, if there was like 9
Packages?
in a package. Mr. Cisco had 14 packages of 15 has 14 packages of tortillas. Like, and there's wait, never mind. Yeah, I haven't really. What I would do is I was multiply if there's 14 times 10, but I haven't done that type of problems yet, and I'm thinking of what else to do. And
You see where he feels a little stuck? Yeah.
now I'm thinking maybe the 10-6 can help me
Okay.
a little bit.
And you can just put them right on top of the paper if you need to use the.
Uh, 14 packages. Let me just throw that real quick.
All right, how many circles is he going to draw? 14.
There's the 14 packages. And there's 10 each. I'm gonna act like these ones, blocks are 10,
Okay.
20. Here's the 5 extra. So there's 10 and all the 14 packages, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140. And there's 5 extra, so 141, 142, 143, 144, 145.
Okay. Nice job, Evan.
All right. Talk to each other. All the things that you were noticing and feeling through that. You can breathe. You can breathe now. Yeah. Okay, can we talk together? So besides Evan badly needing a tissue that they could have just given him, but he did not give up. Right? Can we hear some of the things that you talked about, what you noticed? Yeah.
When we did the work in the book with a partner we didn't know, my partner talked about learned helplessness in kids. And I could see all of us like leaning closer, and we just wanted to help him. And he struggled for a very long time. And we were talking about how difficult that is in a full classroom when so-and-so isn't struggling, but this one is. It's hard to give them that time because they see somebody else is already figuring something out. So letting them struggle.
Yeah, letting them struggle. I actually heard the phrase productive struggle come up in number of tables where he's not just like shut down struggling. Like it's this, hold on, okay, I don't think I know this, right? I'm gonna tell you what I know. Did you catch what he was trying to say? Like if it was less than 10, right? So it's like, no one's ever taught me this kind of problem before. There's a little bit of that. And so I think what you're recognizing is as teachers, we think, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to jump in and help, right? Like that's my role. And it's with really good intentions. And that doesn't mean never jump in and help, but it means what happens. I don't know, for me, this video helps me think what happens when I just sit back a little bit and like, he knows I'm here, right? But I can just watch. And I know there's a luxury to these one-on-one situations that doesn't exist in your classroom. So it's a little bit of a how do we support problem-solving opportunities in our classrooms where children really feel like they can have some time and space to work through it, and it's productive for them. Maybe they finish, maybe they don't today, but there is this productive work that's happening, and it does feel long. I don't know. I know there were some cuts at the end of the day. It's only a few minutes, right? Even just a couple of minutes. All of the other videos, we were done in like 42 seconds, start to finish, but real learning takes a little bit of time. Okay, what else did people see, notice, react to? Were you surprised by stuff, right? Did you anticipate something happening and something different happened?
I noticed how he made the manipulative work for himself, right? He created his own model. So here these represent tens. And because he assigned the 10 value, he also knew that the other ones represented ones. So he was able to switch over his counting.
Yeah.
But, to let kids explore with the tools and let them solve them on their own rather than try to teach this is the way to use this tool kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Does it remind you of Jada a little bit earlier? She had one cube that meant package and the other cubes meant gum. Evan says these cubes, some of them mean tens, right? The ones that are here, and then the ones outside, those mean ones, and we can kind of gasp and like get worried that he's going to get confused. But if that's the meaning he's assigning to them and he can tell you about that, right, he really knows what he's doing here. He did talk about the 10 sticks though, right? He kind of looked over at them and he's like, oh, there's an idea, right? After I'm kind of thinking about it. So what are your thoughts about not using the 10 sticks, even though he does kind of mention them here in the video?
I think it didn't fit the circles that he drew. Sorry. I don't think it fit the circles that he drew.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that for me, there's a little problem solving in the moment. I bet if he had really big circles and a really big page, he probably would have put a 10 stick, but he saw, oh no, like I just need to get these circles out. For me, that was a kind of breaking point for him, right? Or I don't know, what's the tipping point? I'm really bad with idioms. But it's like, he's like, okay, if I just start drawing these packages, like that's gonna help me get started. And it's like the moment that happened, it's like the whole rest of the strategy worked its way out. So he could picture these 14 packages, and as he's drawing them, oh, they're not quite big enough for the 10 stick, what I was trying to talk about before, I can put a 1 in it, and that can be a 10. And still keep these other cubes as ones. which we didn't know was going to happen until he counted all of them up for us. Awesome. Other things? Yeah, go ahead. Oh. Oh. Did people hear that? He might not have had enough. That's really interesting. How often do we only give kids a small amount of things? Mainly because we don't want it to be overwhelmed. People worry, right? Are they just going to play and build? Really, let them play and build, right? That's a good starting point. But maybe he actually didn't have enough tool here available for him to do it.
One thing that I was looking for that I noticed he didn't demonstrate was I was looking for more place value language, not even the 14 tens, but even when he added the next 5, he didn't say 140 and 5 more. He counted 141, 142, 143. So I was listening for place value language and I wasn't hearing it.
Yeah, but I love how we can share with each other. These are the things I'm listening for, right? So that's a developed skill that kind of comes with knowledge of the mathematical content and with children's thinking. Am I hearing or am I anticipating that he's going to say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50? Or maybe he'll say, oh, I know those 10 tens are 100. And then 110, 120, 130, 140? Or is he counting all of them by tens, and is he able to, this is hard, to count on by tens and then to count by ones from there, right? To like switch that skip counting sequence. So he's demonstrating a lot of knowledge, but it is a little different than saying 14 tens is 140, 5 more ones, that would be 145. So these are all details that we might listen for, and they all give us a little bit different evidence of what a child knows. So these are things, right? A question that I often ask, I didn't quite ask it with Evan because we had a lot to talk about with him, but I might just open by saying, what does the child know? Right? That's our kind of framing, reflective question that we might have with any of the videos. What can you say you have evidence of that the child knows from watching exactly what they did? And so that's a lovely, lovely starting point as we're supporting teachers to pay attention to children's thinking and for us to talk about and learn about children's thinking together. All right. So we've stumbled into a different type of problem than we've been working on before. And so most of the problems that we focused on this morning were addition, subtraction kinds of problems, right? Page 14, all adding and subtracting. We've now left page 14, right? We've now moved into slightly different content. We're in equal grouping. This is a multiplication kind of problem, but it's like multiplication and a plussing happening, right? There's like a lot happening in there. People call it a multi-step problem. But one thing very intentional about this problem type is it's a bunch of packages, but what's inside of each package? There's 10. Like that was an intentional number choice to say put 10 in each package. So if you think about the whole structure of this problem, it's 14 groups of 10 plus 5 ones, right? So this is a place value, base 10 kind of a problem. There's a whole chapter about this in your book. I think it's 6. Sometimes I forget the numberings. There's like multi-digit strategies chapter, but this is later. Page 84, did someone else find it? Base 10 number concepts? Yeah, page 6. So you can put a little like sticky note there if you want. For me, there's something really powerful about posing problems like this to children across lots and lots of different ages, because the problem is designed to force you to think about our base 10 system, whether we have equal groups of 10s or equal groups of 100s or equal groups of 1000s or equal groups of 1/10ths. They don't get into that content in this book, but they do in another book. What we're doing is we're encouraging kids to operate on these increments of 10, right? Or kind of multiples of 10s that are gonna really help us develop understanding of our place value system, of our base 10 system. So the problems that we saw earlier, like robin packages of gum, that's a lead-in into this, right? That's a multiplication problem. That was 3 groups of 6, but we can imagine if we bumped into 3 groups of 10, we're encouraging children to operate on groups of 10s. You had, let's see, other problems on your opening sheets, 15 guppies in a jar, right? We can imagine maybe it was 50 guppies in a jar and 10 guppies went into each jar, right? Those are other examples of base 10 kinds of problems. So a big part of what we're going to build from today and into tomorrow, and that I think is a really productive place for us to develop common practice with teachers across K-5, is we can really ground all of our work in how are we supporting understanding of equal grouping and base 10. And we can make connections to this even if you're supporting preschool, even if you're supporting 5th grade. So one big way we might think about that on the left is kind of what we're talking about today, pose equal grouping problems. So we're going to pose robbing gum problems. We're going to pose problems like these packages of tortillas. And especially if those problems have 10 as a unit, right? These are called base 10 problems. We're supporting children to develop understanding of base 10 and understanding of equal grouping. So one big piece of our practice might be posing problems like this. Another piece of our practice that I think some of you are familiar with in this room is an instructional activity we call counting collections, where we ask kids, it's exactly what it sounds like. We ask kids to count collections of stuff. And people who don't know it go, okay, so like what else, right? It really is getting kids to count and to count larger and larger collections and to invite them to organize and count in a variety of different ways that make sense to them. So I wanted to kind of move from all of this problem-solving work that we were thinking about this morning and to think about how another piece of our practice, counting collections of objects, could be supportive of all of the work that we're thinking about supporting across K-5. So you have, right, another resource with you, choral counting and counting collections. So there's a really simple opening into that in the grade K2 chapter where Ms. Granger invites kids to count a collection. And this opening is a really kind of simple way of thinking, what is this activity about? So she says, when you count a collection like this one, and she holds up a collection of plastic frogs, I often make sure I have collections in the room, but I couldn't fit that many in my suitcase from Los Angeles. So just imagine that you had collections around the room. Your job is to count how many things you have and show a picture of how many things you counted. So for me, that's the whole activity. You count stuff and you figure out how many there are, and you can show a picture. You can show a representation of how you counted. You might work by yourself. You might work with a partner. We might share your strategies under the dot cam later. We might take pictures of your collections and share them with each other. But we can actually build a lot of work as we're counting collections and creating a representation of them. So these are actually all images from preschool. I wanted to show you, I know we're not focusing on preschool here today, but this starts from a really young age because kids can count even, 8 Yogurtland spoons. I don't know if Yogurtland's a thing here, it is in California, but frozen yogurt spoons that we, collect and wash off, or dinosaurs, or little gems. And I can just make a representation of my collection. So that's kind of as simple as it can get, right? A small collection of things, and I'm going to count and represent them. But as children grow and this activity grows, we're likely going to get bigger with our collections. So what happens when children are given a quote unquote big collection to count, right? Imagine if I gave you a big collection to count in front of you, put a whole bunch of stuff on the table. Maybe I asked you to count all the Unifix cubes or something. What do you think you would do, right? Would you count all of them by ones forever? You could. Some kids might try to do that. But likely you're going to try to figure out some organizing. So here are some kids getting ready in their classroom. They have a tub of Lego type blocks. And they've realized that they have such a big collection that they want to have another tool to organize. So they had some leftover trays because they do lunch in the classroom or breakfast in the classroom. So they're going to use those to organize. Here in this classroom, they had those, I don't even know what those things are called, but do you see how they made like a little bit of an array? They were trying to figure out, yeah, so they liked that, but then they thought we don't have enough space to do all of these, so they took all of them that were so neatly organized, I think it's a group of 40, and they put them in a cup. And then they made another one, and then they put it in a cup. And they're going to keep going, right? So they're organizing, they're creating these equal groups, and they're putting them in cups. This child here has like a nice felt mat that kids can count on. So he's organizing by twos, using some color, right? The color's really helpful in helping him make a little bit of a pattern and to organize his collection and lay them out. We don't hear in this video, we don't have a video of it, but I'm curious how he ends up counting the total, if he's gonna count by twos or if he's gonna count another way. We can get creative and repurpose household items as tools, egg cartons, cups, things left over from catering, right? That all of these things can be helpful, and children see those as opportunities to organize their count and group their count in different ways. Or maybe I don't have other tools, and I've got these blocks that actually stack really nicely. And so what this pair is doing is they're trying to make a 10 by 10. Can you see what they're building? So that's the layer in the back, and then the layer in the front are gonna be rows of 10s stacked. It ended up being something like 151 until someone knocked it over, but that's okay. They knew exactly how many there were then. So one thing I wanna highlight is that children, when asked to count, like it's, in some sense, it's like a problem, right? But it's not asking you to add or subtract, or you're just trying to figure out how many there are. But you're doing this problem-solving work with a partner oftentimes and really saying, how am I gonna keep organized? That learning happens over time. Kids, I think like I said earlier, often just wanna count by ones, and then what happens? Someone asks them for an eraser, a couple minutes in, and then they lose track. And then they go, you know, or an announcement comes over, right? Or you can be the mean teacher who turns the lights off and turns them back on. But if you think about it, as I'm counting, how do I have a way to keep track of how many I actually have? And what is this problem solving at work that I'm doing in order to figure all of that out? Oops, sorry. So let's watch Lorelei. She's going to count a collection of 31 pennies.
All right. We've got another collection for you, Lorelei. What do you see in here? Can you tell us how many pennies there are in this collection?
I think I'm gonna have to use another technique.
What other technique are you thinking about?
Split them into fours. Actually, fives. And then leave the one right there. So I know 5, and 5, that's 10. 5 and 5, 10. All those together, that's 20. 5 and 5, 10. 20. Okay, so right now we're at 40. And then about 41 pennies.
So how many pennies are there?
41 altogether.
Can you tell me a little, can you remind me how you figured that out? You did some really neat putting numbers together. Remind me again, how did you get the 41?
Okay, I'll go move them back for you.
I'm not gonna do all of them because, like, it kind of gets boring if you repeat it all over again.
But I would love to see it again.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it again anyway.
Thanks.
Not because the teachers want to, because I want to also.
Exactly, because you want to be a math detective.
Okay, I was gonna let it go.
You
Her
get to
teacher's
decide.
sitting right next to me, and she's the one who was like, "Can we see that again?"
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, and that's fine.
What is she looking for now? Yes, where did the one go?
Oh, there we go. That's a missing penny. So I put them in groups of 5. So like we could, so I know 5 plus 5 is 10. Oh. And then I would do 5 plus 5 is 10 again. Add them together, 20. 5 plus 5 is 10. And then, it's 31 pennies.
How'd you get 31 pennies?
I noticed that I accidentally discounted, probably because I was counting a little too fast. So I didn't know it was 30 pennies. So probably now I knew that now it's 30. It's 31.
So how many pennies are there?
31.
Awesome.
All right, Lorelai, thanks for playing along with us, right? Working through them. Do you notice she really pushes those fives together, like in ways that they kind of fly off the table. And I know that's not, you're like, that would be a mess and loud, but that's really what's happening as we're counting. We're joining collections together, right? We're organizing them. And I love how we get to see her do it with such animation, because when we see it on a textbook page, you don't get to see the things go together, right? But she has these physical objects and she can really push them together. Even though sometimes it sends her in the wrong direction here, right? She really knows what it feels like to have fives, and then they make these groups of tens, and then they make these groups of 20. Okay, so that was Lorelai counting these. We're gonna watch another video now. This was a pair of students who had just a big collection of pinto beans, so dried beans in a bag, and they decided they wanted to organize them in these little plastic cups. And if we could get the slide up, that'd be great. So these plastic cups, they decided to put 5 in each cup. And then, Andrew, is it possible if we just hit play and then you just pause? Because I want them to see what it looks like. Let's see. Can you pause it? Okay, awesome. So you see we've got cups, and there's 5 pinto beans in each cup. Can people see that? So this is how they've chosen to organize, right? They've done that. This is off video. But if you notice, there's actually 2 cups stacked on top of each other. You can see the double lips, right? Except for in the very top, that middle one, do you see how that's a single cup? So that's gonna be a cup of 5. All of the other ones are gonna be 2 5s, which is a 10. And I just wanted to say that before we watched, because as we watch, they move them around. It's a little bit like the magician moving the cups thing. So you can follow with your eyes where it goes. So let's hear what they do. You can hit play now.
Sorry. Right by one. Wait, that one already has 2 though. Now I'll leave that with 1. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120. Right here.
So you're both agreeing that it's 120 beans?
Yes. Then now we put 5, 5, and 5, 10.
I'm confused though.
Oh my god, look at room and table.
2 cups, but that only has 1 cup. So now
Because we didn't have enough cups. We didn't have enough cups for that one.
So are there still 10 beans in there?
Oh wait. We need to count that one as 5 only. Because it doesn't have 2. Oh, so we're gonna 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 100, 150. It really got huge.
How do you know it's 115?
Because we counted for 10s and...
Yeah, but can you show me
But the last one was only 1 cup. We didn't have enough. This one only has 5.
So, how many beans are there?
115. You think we should start off on 5, then we go like that? That is kind of different.
Try that. See if it works.
5, 10. No, 5. This one. No, 5, 20. 20. Oh, I don't know this math. It's hard. 5, 10. It's just like we count it this way, but this one only has 5. Okay. 5, 15, 25, 35, 45. Oh, I don't know this math. Yeah, 55. 65. 75? Yeah. 85, 95, 105, and 115.
All right.
What did you get?
115.
Okay, you can talk to each other. Oops, don't look at that one yet. But what did you notice in the cups video? Talk to each other. All right, I'll have, yeah. All right. Can I invite us to come back together? We've got microphones ready. We'd love to hear some of the things you talked about. What did you notice in this video? What stood out to you? What are you thinking about counting and counting collections? What were some of the things? Yeah, Sonia's going to bring you a mic.
I just really liked how they had two kids working together, so they had a thinking partner, and they were both helping each other out and both contributing.
Yeah, I love thinking about how much, like, when we can accomplish something with the partner that I don't think we might have accomplished on our own, right? And that's, you know, that's kind of a special thing, but there's definitely support happening, even in this, like, moral support of, like, that's hard math, I can't do this math, or just, you know, he's like, I can't do this, and his partner's like, okay, 35, 40, you know, he's just trying. And so whatever's happening that's cultivating those practices and identities with each other, right? They're able to support each other with that. Awesome, keep going. I think Will in the back.
I noticed something in the, who was the young man who had a lot of anxiety in the previous part?
Oh, Evan with the tissue?
Evan, okay.
Yeah.
So I think that it's really, another piece that's really important in both of these examples is you talked about, like, how do we do this in a whole group setting, okay? And I think that part of it is helping kids understand that the way that they're feeling while they're doing math, like, help them identify that. It's okay to feel that struggle. It's okay to not know. And it's okay to see a friend doing that. We should honor that person, right? It's not just saying we're a risk-taking classroom. You have to actually point it out to kids and say, it's okay. It's okay, right? And then it doesn't become this awkward space of, I'm done, I have the answer, and my friend doesn't. And does that make sense? I mean, you really, and by creating that math identity, right, and honoring that and saying, that kid persevered, that's way more important than the right answer or the wrong answer, because that kid will do that every single time from now on, right?
That's one of the hopes, right? Yeah. That's what we're cultivating in children's mathematical identities. And so I think a big part of what Will was focusing on, kind of what kids are feeling, but that's a function of what do we create as math in our classrooms? And is it the same thing that they experienced in the past, which might have been in 30 minutes, everyone's gonna do basically the exact same thing that wasn't really that hard, and we kind of put a little check mark or a star or a bow on it, and then we're done? or we're actually posing things that are a little bit of a stretch, right? Kind of that zone of proximal development a lot of people think about, but that kind of push kids to say, ooh, maybe I don't quite know, but I know how to get started. And as we're cultivating those identities, kids will see that my perseverance is going to pay off. But that only works when we're supporting a classroom and supporting a group of students to say, like, we're going to challenge ourselves sometimes. We're not always going to answer it today. We might think about it more and come back from lunch or come back tomorrow. And I think a lot of us feel really uncomfortable with that idea, because curricular materials are set up so that things happen in these short chunks, step by step. Again, with this assumption that learning happens in that very linear ladder, step by step, which we know it does not. And so here, it's like, how do we invite children into these, I want to say safe, but I know, quote unquote safe spaces where they get to see that their ideas matter and their thinking and their effort matters. And that as long as it's mathematically productive, what you're doing versus what the next kiddo over is doing is likely going to look kind of different. And our whole goal is to learn together. This is a pretty big deviation from what a lot of kids experience in classrooms. And so if we're encouraging teachers to take on these ideas, that's a big shift for the teachers and for the kids' experiences. You had your hand up. Oh, in the back, and then we'll come over here. Yeah.
One of the things that was mentioned at our table is often in those early L spaces, teachers are asked to give like counting assessments to see where kids are. Whereas if this is a routine in your classroom, kids are regularly counting all the time. So instead of having to take a couple days pulling kids in the hallway to hear them count, you're getting this data all the time in really authentic ways and getting to really see, do they have those counting sequences? What are they counting by? Do they have one-to-one? Can they do the groupings in ways that feel authentic to them versus being pulled out in a hallway a few times a year to run through a number sequence?
Lovely, right? So instead of having to do these one-on-one assessments, we can have all kids, right? Everyone go grab your partner and grab a collection, and we can circulate around the room, and we get to look over shoulders and learn a lot about what kids know. And the tricky part is, how do I document that? But we got to take some notes, and we get to learn a lot about what kids are doing. So I know a lot of teachers like to start their school years with multiple days of this. First of all, it's fun for kids, right? Kids aren't going to go, I'm bored today, unless you overstructure it and say everybody has to make groups of 10s every time or whatever, right? If you overstructure it. But if you say your job is just figure out how many clothespins you have, and maybe that collection has been counted before, do we still have the same amount, or did someone lose one? There might be a really important reason why we need to know how many are in here. But these, like you said, authentic opportunities to know how many there are, that's a really rich place for us to learn a lot about kids. And for kids to start to get used to sharing their own ideas with us and with each other. So here and then here, yeah.
There were a couple of things that hit me. First, what you said about, let's just wait until tomorrow and pick this up again. Kind of that delayed gratification, to me, feeds into the grit that we really lack in our students today. They want everything quickly. They want the answer now. But just giving them time to marinate in their thinking till they get to the right answer. And the second thing, I was at the August conference, and they talked about math identity and the powers that teachers have with the words they use during instruction. And this teacher is saying, not that you're wrong and they shut down, but I'm really confused. So then it kind of empowers the mathematicians to help the teacher understand what their thinking is and then to get to the right answer that way. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, so she had this purposeful use of her language as she's engaging with them that gets them to count and rethink their count in a different way. Nice. How about over?
And to add on to that, I'm thinking about the language that's used at home and how we can, this is so powerful and this is so big that we engage families and communities. So maybe the children's thinking isn't undone when they go home by a parent that says something like, well, where's the worksheets? I want to see the worksheets that show me what you're learning. Or I hated math as a kid, So that safe environment, that wonderful world of exploration in the classroom, that we need to also inform our families and parents that this is how we're doing things, so they don't undo.
Absolutely. And it's with good intention that they do, right? Because they just want to be supportive of kids. They want to help kids with their homework. But if it's like, well, this is how they taught me in school, that's the only way I want you to do it, that's a little bit different of a message that kids might be getting from your classroom. I think counting collections is a nice activity that travels across home and school because it's mathy enough, right? Where parents recognize that it's math, but it's not math enough that they'll let kids explore a little bit, right? That it doesn't feel like you have to do the exact standard algorithm or something. I mean, we share it with families. When the pandemic hit, oh my goodness, we did lots of counting collections at homework and like shared videos and such. One thing that I've learned is similar to what you would do in math and what you would do with teachers, I do want to let parents know that when kids count, they might count differently than how you want to count. And especially if they're young and they're still working on those teen numbers, they might still be working on their counting sequence. So don't panic about that because kids are going to learn they're not going to skip 13 forever, right? They're like things are going to happen, but we have to allow them to engage and to build the one-to-one correspondence and to have that counting practice. And it's okay to make mistakes when counting. You wouldn't, honestly, they've always been there. We just never heard them before because we never gave kids space to show them to us. So a lot of times teachers get nervous that, oh my goodness, kids are showing these misconceptions. They've always been there, right? Kids have always had those misconceptions. We just didn't give space for them to emerge and surface. Now they do, and so now we can address them. And now we can help kids make connections and to understand why it doesn't go from 12 to 14, right? So counting collections for me is a really nice space that, again, travels to home, school, across grade levels. So for those of you who live in the upper elementary world, you might be thinking, how does this keep going, right? So we're thinking about, I get why young kids have to count. As we count and count larger and larger objects, larger collections of objects, we're forced to group, we're forced to make groups of groups, right? We're really building our conceptual understanding of equal grouping. We might take a simple collection, and I'll take my slide again. We might take a simple collection and ask kids not just to count, ooh, maybe I won't tell you yet. I'm gonna let you, hold on. Forget I just said something. I want you to see this collection of, I call them dinosaurs, but someone pointed out they're not all dinosaurs. So like prehistoric creatures is probably a little bit more accurate. And this was a collection organized by a pair of students. And there is something intentional happening over on the bottom left, if you see that. So can you just talk to someone next to you? What do you think's happening? What do you think the students are doing here with the count? Okay, can I hear some speculations? I don't know. What do people think might be happening? Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Killing off a dinosaur, possible.
I was going to say the same thing. The two red T-Rexes are fighting, and the other one's gone.
Okay. So maybe they're not fighting. Maybe they're hugging. I've heard that, right? I don't know. You're like, oh, that California girl is just trying to bring nonviolence. So I don't know. So the students who were counting this thought it would be boring to count the animals. So they wanted to count the legs. So talk to each other about what you think's happening. Yes, they wanted to count the legs. All right, how many legs does a T-Rex have? Yeah, the little arms don't count. Where that's That's what came up with this. So why do you think the one T-Rex is laying down? Yeah, because it's not the same as a group of four, right? They were trying to do something that looked different to help like signify that that is not an equal group of four, like all of the other ones are equal groups of four. So this is a way that counting collections can grow as children grow, right? And mathematically they grow. We might get bored just counting, it's like 40, I don't know, 40-ish things. And we might say, what if we count the legs? What if we count the ears? What if we count, right, some other feature of, and now I don't have to force myself to count by fours because they actually thought about 20s. Do you see a column of 5? So they thought about 20s. So they didn't actually go 4, 8, 12, right? They went 20, 40, kind of like that. I don't have to count by fours, but I'm forced to at least deal with that 4 in my strategy or in my organization. And that's a way that this can get more complicated. So we're gonna watch a video of a child who's counting crayons that come in packages of 16s. And there's a bunch of packages of 16s. So he's not going to go 16, 32, 48. I think that's as far as I can go right now. He's going to start by saying 10s. And then what do you think he might say next? Oh, all right, well, let's see Christopher.
10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then we started with the 5s.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, 95, 94, 100, 105, 110, 115, 120, 125, 130, 135, and then we started with the 1.
Okay, keep going then.
136, 137, 138, 139, 140, 141, 142, 143, 144.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
a really
lot of
good number. That is a lot of counting. So how many are in your collection again, Christopher?
144.
How would you write that number 144?
Like
How would you write it, Lena?
144.
A 1, a 4, and a 4. Do you agree?
Yep.
Yeah.
Here it is.
All right, let's see.
144.
Nice. Okay, so think about how you're going to show your collection. How are you going to show that?
All right, I know we're cheering for Christopher, and this teacher's like, right, so he had worked with, the 3 of them had worked together, and he's just telling us what he did. So talk to someone next to you, what's something you notice? Briefly talk to someone next to you. Okay. So I know I'm cutting our conversations a little bit short, but I heard kind of people like surprised, impressed, especially impressed at how he's able to keep track of all of this. So without writing things down, yeah. So I mean, I think likely he and his partners counted it a number of times, right? It wasn't just like, oh, we had an idea and we were done, right? So he's just kind of recreating it for us. So what I wanted to think about is, okay, he's not thinking about what I just put up on the slide, but mathematically, that's what's happening. Do people agree? So we've got 9 groups of 16, and instead of just thinking about the 16 in its entirety, we're thinking about the 16 as a 10, a 5, and a 1. And so in essence, right, I'm doing 9 groups of 10, and I'm adding 9 groups of 5, and I'm adding 9 groups of 1. There's a math property that's playing out in what we're doing here. Did I put it up right? My math people in the room? Yeah. So again, I'm not arguing that Christopher is saying any of these words or using any of this symbolic notation yet, but what I'm arguing is that his work counting collections over time and applying this counting work into something like this is allowing him to operate on multi-digit numbers in really, really complex ways. And he's like, his strategy is embodying this thing that when I was in school, I just had to memorize that that was different than the associative property, than the commutative property, and I had to draw lines, right? I had to pick which one was which, and that was the extent of what I was asked to do as a kid. Now we're actually asking children to use properties of operations, this, the commutative property, all the properties, as they're solving problems. And that's complex work. So what I love about something like counting collections, again, it starts with go count a collection of things, right? It starts that simply, is over time, it really, really allows children to manipulate and organize and move around and compose and decompose these quantities and start to do things that support such deep understanding of the quantities and the numbers. That's really going to lay foundational work for all of the mathematical work that they're going to be doing later. Okay, so I'm going to give us just a few minutes of a stretch break. If you're like really chewing on something, I encourage you to tell someone next to you. I know like there might be chocolates on the table, like the energy level goes low as we digest. I encourage everybody to at least stand up if you can, get a breath of fresh air. If we can come back in 7 minutes, I think that gets us to 2:25. I'll see you back here in just a moment.
Nick also has some chocolate over there at the table.
All right, I know that was short. I apologize. I'm going to invite us to make our way back. You can swing by and get another pop or a coffee. Do you say pop here or soda? Pop. Pop. Okay. Well, I saw it on one of the signs said pop. I know it's a regional thing. Okay. So hopefully my plan for this afternoon was to give you an idea of there's lots and lots of different ways that we can support children to really understand equal grouping in base 10. Counting collections, I think, helps us with lots and lots of stuff, right? But I wanted to bring focus mathematically to what's happening. So I think about counting collections as this routine activity that's designed to be done again and again. If you do it once and then pack it all the way to next year, it's kind of a lot of materials to prep for just one time. And kids, they're gonna like, it takes some time to get into it, and really the ideas grow. But my hope is that you see that children develop ideas in here that's really gonna support all of their other mathematical work, right? So I love counting collections. Like I edited a book about it, right? Like I do this work with teachers all through lots and lots of grades, all over all the networks that I work in. I could really talk about counting all the time. At the end of the day, it's not about the counting. Do you get it? Right? Like, it's important work, but it's in service of lots of other important mathematical work. So I hope you get to see that there's varied quantities and items and features. Items can be packaged where we don't open up the packages, we just count that there's 16 in them, or we can count the legs on dinosaurs. Children are playfully experimenting with different organizations and grouping. We're building number sense, we're building place value. And then the piece that I wanted us to get into now is we're supporting the development of written representation, including equations, including symbolic notation. So that's where we're gonna kind of move into now. And so I want you to think about this with other math in mind, right? Like we're doing all of this work within counting collections, but it's not just for the sake of counting, it's for the sake of really understanding all of the other math work that we're asking kids to do. So a big part of counting, we count things, but we also invite children to draw a picture of what they counted, or to record what they counted, or to create a written representation of what they've counted. And so we might say that in slightly different ways depending on the age of students that we're working with. I wanted to kind of big picture why we care about written representation. So some of this work comes from the children's mathematics book that you have in front of you. Written representation serves multiple purposes, right? When we ask kids to write stuff down, it's a tool to support problem solving. So what does that mean? When I write things down, it actually helps me solve the problem, right? It helps me keep track of my thinking, it helps me get started. I might draw things, I might write numbers, I might draw a number line. It's a tool that supports my problem solving. It's a tool that allows me to reflect on that problem solving. So as I start to draw out my number line and I make some jumps, if I go, hold on, why am I making so many jumps? That doesn't look right to me. I'm actually reflecting upon my thinking and my work. Or I can't think of another example, but you get it, right? Like as I'm writing things down and I see what's written in front of me, oh, Evan with his 14 packages of tortillas, if I drew a whole page of them, because I started thinking individual tortillas, not packages of tortillas, and then I would go, hold on, wait, are these the packages? Or, oh no, these are the packages, right? I would reflect on what it is that I'm writing down. Written representation is also something that communicates with others. And I really sit in this definition of representation because I think we kind of forget the third one. Or maybe we don't forget it, but we don't necessarily see it as something that prioritizes why we ask kids to write things down. So for me, in CGI classrooms, a big part of how kids learn is they share their ideas with each other. So I can do that by looking at tools that kids are using. I can do that by hearing their verbal explanations. But a lot of the work that I'm going to be doing is seeing what kids write down, because we can keep that in our journals, we can display that under a doc cam, we can create really pretty bulletin boards with their student work up on there. And that's not just a pretty thing, that's a, hey, your thinking is valued, and we want you to be able to access your thinking and other kids' thinking. So just like we thought about with strategy sharing with the 12 packages of gum, gosh, we like gum a lot in this, I don't know why. The thing we were thinking about in looking at that student work is looking at someone else's student work is seeing them communicating their ideas to us. And so if I have that in mind, I'm gonna write things down that aren't just for me, but that are actually a communication to somebody else. Kids are probably already used to like the teacher looking at their student work, but for them to know when I write things down, other kids are gonna look at it and they might wonder why I put a 12 there, or they might wonder what these boxes mean. That's gonna influence their representations. That's gonna support them and encourage them to add more detail or to clarify things. You'll hear kids say, well, I was gonna write that, but I thought that might confuse kids, so I decided to write this now. That's all really important conceptual understanding being developed, just as kids are problem solving, just as kids are counting. And so I'm gonna get us into thinking about the development of written representation in the space of just counting things. I'm not asking you to operate on like 14 times 10, all these crazy things. We're just asking kids to count things. So I see counting collections as this productive space for children to support the development of written representation. So it's gonna start looking like this. This is preschool. Actually, this might even be TK, which is our like 4-year-old early kindergarten that we have in California. What are they trying to communicate? They're trying to communicate that they had a lot of stuff, right? This is Evelie's collection, and she even put the items directly on top of them. Some of you are looking for, is there one-to-one correspondence, right? That's what we're looking for. Right now, she's just working on putting things on paper, right? Working on the fine motor of that and showing that some of these marks mean that there's a puffball there. And it's hard to see this one, but I love it. Do you see there's pencil marks on that paper? And you see there's a lot more pencil marks than there are actual counting chips. This is another, I counted a lot of stuff today, right? And this is what children are gonna represent for us. So I love showing these because a lot of times teachers, especially of younger children, say, well, my kids aren't ready to represent yet, or they don't quite know they don't quite know what that means, so I'm gonna hold off. That's because they think that they did something wrong when kids are showing representations like these. What I like to help teachers see is, this is amazing. This is where it all starts. Because once we start here, we can have conversations about it. Kids can ask Evelie, like, what do those marks mean? You know, like, why do some of those marks not match one of the puffballs? Like, they might ask questions about it. Teachers might ask the child on the right, how many did you have in your collection? And they might ask, how many did you draw on your paper? Those two questions just start to make me think, oh, there's something about how many, right, I counted and how many I drew. And as we're counting things and we see what they look like, and we learn from other kids, we can go from what Kira represented in, this was like September, to October. Like, there's a lot of differences that happen because, oh my goodness, it was so neat when somebody else started writing their numbers inside of those. I wanna try that. There you go, there's number writing practice. And other kids were starting to line things up. I wanna line things up too. And some of you might be wondering what the big 1, 2, 3 are on the very top. Kids in her class asked her, right? She got to stand up in front of the dot cam with her little body, put it under the dot cam, and kids raised their hand and they said, what is that big 1, 2, 3? And she said, I started to trace them, but I was afraid I was gonna run out of room. So I started over. I mean, look how smart that is. And that comes from not just doing counting collections once at the beginning of the year and once at the end of the year, but it was a regular part of their practice, and it allowed for this growth and this development of work happening over time. And we can see, again, it's a little hard to see Trevor, but do you see how he's made some groups with his collection? They're equal groups of 10s. Some of those 10s look organized in certain ways and organized in other ways. And we can see somebody else's representation where we're still seeing groups of 10, but do you notice how we're no longer seeing every single individual object? That's something a little bit different, because when we go back to Trevor, I actually don't know if he counted 10, 20, 30, 40, because he could have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're all there. We don't know. It's likely he went 10, 20, 30, 40. Here, it's not likely that they went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 because they're not there anymore, right? What I have here is the sequence. If you're looking for the 100, it got skipped between the 90 and the 110. And so we put it later after the 100. So don't worry, it gets there eventually. And we're not always counting by tens, right? This is Ashley counting by fives. And that little numbers on top are her counting sequence, 5, 10, 15, 20. Here's Jeremiah and Sebastian. A lot of times teachers will encourage kids to count a collection together, but then represent it on their own. So what's interesting is they might have organized and done some organizational counting work together, but their representations might look different from each other, and that's a place for kids to learn from each other. So Jeremiah and Sebastian counted by 30s. And at the bottom, I know it's hard to see all the writing, but the prompt the teacher had was, this is one way to write our collection as an equation. So an added extension that you might have, I'm not saying do it all the time or for every child, but an added extension is, how can I write an equation that matches my collection? So I'm going to have you look at the dinosaurs again. Can you just find some blank paper, I don't know, in your notepad or whatever you have in front of you? Can you just write an equation for that collection and show it to someone next to you? See if you wrote the same thing. You can write a couple of equations. What's an equation that you can write that matches this collection? Okay, there isn't one right answer to this. There's lots of different equations that you could write for this collection. All right, did a lot of you write equations like these that might match the collection of animals? Or maybe, yeah, maybe you did the legs, so maybe your equations look more like those. Were you thinking about if you wanted to use parentheses anywhere? Can someone tell me, like in this top one with all the fives, can someone tell me where might I find a 5? Where is one of those 5s? Yeah, I love the arms that are going like this, right? The columns are 5s. So where's the 6? That last one, awesome. How about this 8 times 5? Where is that happening? All the 8 columns, the columns of 5, awesome. How about, ooh, this first part here, there's a 7 times 5 times a 4. Like what, I guess, what could I ask about, right? This is a place where you could think about where teachers might ask questions that, that get kids, what about this 7 times 5? Where do you see that happening? 7 columns of 5s, and then why are we multiplying it by 4? Because they're thinking about the 4 legs. So just that part, that 7 times 5 times 4 is all of those legs in those first columns. And then, do you see that plus 2 happening? Ooh, there's a minus 2 happening here. What is that? Where is that minus 2 coming from? That last laying down T-Rex, like, lost a couple or something like that. Okay. So I know that was really quick, right? And so normally I'd encourage people to share them, write them up, and really the thing that I think is important is the conversation that has us talk about where is that like +1, right? Where do these numbers exist in that collection? So those of you who like get frustrated with order of operations, think about what kids are actually learning about what the operations really mean and how we don't need to necessarily memorize rules about what we're multiplying and adding, because it does not make sense to add those extra 2 legs or something in something that we're multiplying. But what we're doing is we're developing symbolic meaning of all of this work. Okay. So don't stretch and find a different partner, because I had you do that. I mean, we already did a stretch break, but can you just take a quick moment? Which ideas are you most connecting with? Which ideas would be helpful for teachers related to our counting collections and our grouping problems work? Yeah, I think so. Okay. All right, I'm going to invite us to come back together. So I just wanted to point out that we did give you a copy of this, possible representation sheet that kids might use. It doesn't have to look like this, right? Teachers are always like, I have to have the best thing or whatever. They really don't have to look like that. It can be a blank piece of paper or your desk with a dry erase marker. But what's nice about having something like this is you can just slip it into someone's box to remind them, like it is an artifact that reminds us, oh, we should ask kids to be representing their collection. So you can file that away. You're gonna get all the handouts digitally too. So don't worry if you lose that one or if you wrote on it. We passed out this equal sharing handout, but I'm not going to get to it because we've maxed out, like mentally and with our time. So can you please slip this into your purple folders for tomorrow? We'll talk about sharing cookies tomorrow. We talked about cookies enough today. Okay. All right. So we have a Slido, right? Andrew, if you want to share that. Just a way to kind of capture our takeaways. It's much later in the slides, our takeaways and such. So ignore all this. Pretend you didn't see it. You'll see it tomorrow. It's fun though. What are your key takeaways you want to hold on to from our learning today? So this requires you're all going to take out your phones and I'll move out of the way and respond to these.
Or you can go to slido.com and enter the code 2174159. We're seeing the value of counting collections. Authentic learning opportunities. It's okay to productively struggle in mathematics. Students need time to think. Children are beautiful and brilliant. The role of asking questions. Children have so many important things to say. So much value into hearing children's thinking. Giving them an opportunity to explore and make mistakes. Kids have intuitive ways of thinking.
I love it. So I get to look at all of those in some database, and so I really appreciate that you're sharing those key takeaways. As a reminder, we have a parking lot for like questions, hopes, needs, and I know sometimes it feels like, oh, I have a question, but I don't want to like raise my hand and do that thing. But please feel like as you're leaving today, you can write it on a Post-it note. If you think of one overnight, you can take a couple of Post-it notes with you so that you can come back with them. And you can always say asking for a friend. But my goal is to make sure that we're addressing questions that we have together. I wanted to share our preview for tomorrow, but did you want to talk?
Yes.
What do you think? Yeah.
Andrew, could we go back to the slide deck?
So just a quick preview of kind of the content that we're working on tomorrow. Again, today we built from single digit work into equal grouping and counting, right? That supports equal grouping. If we go back one more slide, we'll see that we're going to get across all 4 operations, and we're going to get into fractions and decimals, which I know, like I was really hoping we'd get there today, because some of you are going to be like, why aren't we talking about that yet? But I promise it's on the plan for tomorrow. And really all of this in service of our own learning, but also in service of supporting other teachers. So we're going to get more into that.
Let's thank Angela for a wonderful day of learning.
Thanks. So your homework is not to go read the 3 heavy books that you have. but to enjoy a little bit of this sunshine and warm weather.
We will ask you to bust your tables and clean up your tables before you leave. They will replace the linens. So we have a countertop here. If you can bring the basket of math manipulatives, the Unifix cubes we will be using tomorrow, the table materials, the Post-it notes, if you can place them all on the counter. Keep the folder of the handouts for yourself. The books you could take home. Will they need the books tomorrow, Angela? You will need the books tomorrow, so bring back the books. You can. I would take them back with me. I would take them back with me. We will see you tomorrow. Breakfast will start at 7:45 and we will begin at 8:30.